So, this has been hyped up for what feels like a very, very long time. The British GT Pack DLC in Assetto Corsa Competizione is finally upon us, and it looks extremely good, I'm not going to lie. I thought I'd give a slightly different take on showing you guys the DLC. I was very fortunate that Kunos sent me this in advance, so of course a big thank you to them, but I want to show you guys how close this pack and ACC is to reality. For those of you who don't know, I did compete in British GT in real life last year in 2020, so my thoughts and memories of what the cars and the tracks are like are still pretty fresh. Let's get into it then. So first of all, I'm going to put it out there, what content do you get with the British GT pack? So you get 3 new tracks in the form of Alton Park, Donington Park and Snetterton, along with car lineups from 2019 and 2020 that competed in British GT. So that does mean, lads, I'm in the game again. So we're in it twice now, in the European bit for 2020 and in British GT. So has anyone been in the game twice? Well, I think, I'm going to claim that as world first. Anyway, I can get my head through a doorway still, don't worry, it's not gone straight to my head, but along with this new content, I've been told Kunos have implemented a few more system updates to ACC, so it should be, in theory, a little bit smoother. Now, like all of the other tracks in ACC, these new ones are laser scanned, and trust me when I say these are by far the most realistic versions of Alton, Donington and Snet you'll find in sim racing, no doubt about it. They're so realistic, so immersive, the detail is incredible. If you want to get a rough idea of what I was experiencing last year in that McLaren in British GT, get yourself a VR headset, a decent PC to run it, and run these tracks on ACC because trust me, it's insane. So it is worth saying, a few months back, Kunos very kindly gave me access to the tracks in their early development days, so I could use them to practice ahead of the British GT rounds that were coming up. And that was a big part of my prep. Obviously on the sim, I couldn't just go and get a McLaren for the weekend and blast around a real track, so I had to rely on the sim, and using these laser scan tracks, it just allowed me to turn up at the race weekend and hit the ground running. So it really did help throughout that whole season. So as you can see, I'm overlaying a lot of the footage I got from ACC with the onboards, with some of the onboards I got from real life racing in 2020, and it's uncanny how similar they are. I mean, from the obvious things like track width and elevation change, the distances from corner to corner, and then you go into the more minor stuff like curbs, bumps, runoff areas, things like trees, even the grandstands. I mean, they're so similar. And with Donington as well, I do like the addition of the planes flying over the track. It's quite a nice touch. Some noticeable things about the track specifically are that Alton seemed extremely bumpy, maybe a little bit too bumpy to be fair, and the same with Donington except the other way round. So Donington in this game is butter smooth, which feels really good in the force feedback through your wheel, but I think it's probably a little bit too smooth. I am nitpicking, obviously they're not far away, I'm just giving you my thoughts. I think in terms of my favourite car, the McLaren, it's going to be a beast at Donington, but a bit of a boat around Alton, because the McLaren in this game doesn't deal with bumps very well. I think that's a characteristic we all know about the McLaren, but at Donington it should be rapid. I am guessing though, so let's wait and see how that turns out. But at Donington as well, I felt like I could brake a lot later compared to real life, which I didn't really find at the other 2 tracks, and that must be because Donington's so smooth. So it's just a bit of an interesting observation I got from that. If you do want to compare lap times between the sim and real life, then like all tracks in the game, the sim is noticeably quicker than real life. I suppose that's to be expected though, because there's more variables working in favour of the sim. You know, the setups, for example, not having the laws of physics kind of standing in their way, whereas in real life you are limited in that sense. But yeah, it's always going to be in favour of the sim, and it's only a couple of seconds, so I suppose you can take that and go, they must be realistic because the lap times are fairly comparable. Now if we move on to the wet physics, these haven't changed in this update, but I thought I'd give my view on it anyway, as last year I drove at both Donington and Snetterton in the wet, so I can kind of properly compare the 2 sensations. And the wet physics are the one thing, in my opinion, that ACC needs to improve if it's trying to mimic reality, because the dry rubbered line is a bit too grippy, meaning it's faster than the conventional wet line, which in reality is not the case. And don't get me wrong, it's got the best wet physics out of any sim racing game out there, but it could be more realistic for sure. And as you can see by the difference in lines shown by both the sim and real life footage, there's quite a difference. And so I thought a nice way to end the video would be doing a little 5-minute race around the mini Nordschleife, otherwise known as Alton Park, and yeah, let's have a little look. Okay, so as we approach the final corner on the run to the start, some of you may recognise I'm in 4th position, which is where I started my first ever real life race in British GT last year, and I thought it was just a bit nostalgic, so why not? And the lights are about to go out. We're surrounded by Lamborghinis and a McLaren to our right. We get a decent start compared to the AI. So the AI here are on 100, which is the hardest difficulty. We got the inside of Jay Cocker in the Lamborghini, and behind Dennis Lind. So a decent start. I mean, it looks awesome, man. The track is so bumpy, but to be fair, it does add a little bit of immersion to it. And we get a really good exit off turn 3, right behind the Lamborghini. I thought I could have probably gone for the move there, but I thought I'll show you guys how the AI perform around Alton Park. If I just pass him and then run off into the distance, it wouldn't make a very good video. So you can see there the Lamborghini through that hairpin where it's so bumpy. I think the McLaren's probably bottoming out through there. The Lamborghini has a definite advantage through there, or the AI does at least. I'm not sure whether it's the car or the computer. I'm not sure. And the line it took through that chicane was pretty mental, not going to lie. I don't know how he actually kept it on the track, but it seemed pretty quick for him. And through the chicane as well, we're pretty even through here. I think a general theme was that the McLaren was better in the high-speed stuff, the Lamborghini better in the low-speed stuff. You can see that the curb there was so aggressive on the exit, but I think that does reflect real life. But I think the reason why it's so extreme in this video is because the AI are in control of the cars, and they do some pretty weird things in any game, to be fair. So yeah, as I said, the AI is on the hardest difficulty it can be, and apart from Dennis Lind and the Lamborghini, the other cars behind us they're quite a way off, and it's weird where or how different the pace deficit is, say in turn 1, turn 3, where we're a lot quicker than the cars around us. You can see here on the exit we'll get a little bit back on the Lamborghini. It's like they get too much wheel spin on the exit and start swirling away from the racing line. You can see here on the exit of turn 3 as well, he does exactly the same thing, a really tight line in, so he loses time in the middle part of the corner, and then he almost like wheel spins off the exit. So we got the inside of the Lamborghini going into Island Bend, and he brakes super early and we get up the inside, so we do take the lead of the race. You can see here in the mirrors the Lamborghini behind us is so much quicker through there. I guess he's just not bottoming out in the same way we are, which is costing us a load of lap time. And if I do remember from the first race at Alton Park, I had Rob Collard behind me in the Lamborghini, and it's going to sound a bit, like I'm faking it, but the characteristics of where the Lambo was quick compared to us was very similar to what this video is showing. It wasn't as extreme, don't get me wrong, but through that hairpin, for example, the Lamborghini was definitely quicker. I remember Rob being in my mirrors quite close through there, and then I'd start to pull away in these high-speed sections. So the Lambo here in real life was probably the quickest car. The McLaren, not so much. It wasn't too bad, but I think in the game, in ACC, just for your reference, the McLaren won't be very strong around here. I think Donington it will be. Snetterton, I think it could be as well. Snetterton, it's a weird one. Obviously in real life in the wet it wasn't very strong, but in the dry I think there's enough high-speed corners and heavy braking zones for it to kind of make up the deficit to the Lambo and the Merc. But yeah, you can see that going into lap 3, or is it lap 3 or lap 2? I think it's lap 3, isn't it? Oh, completely lost track now, but you can see where the tyres are coming to us, the pressures are in the right window, around that 27.5 mark, and I just whacked a random setup on it. It seemed okay. It's probably a bit too stiff, a bit too twitchy for this track. You can see there we get a massive slide through Island Bend, but the downforce of the car keeps us on the track, and I think the setup for Alton would have to be pretty extreme in terms of soft. The bump stop range would have to be quite long, just allowing it to kind of allowing it to comply with the bumps that Alton has to offer. The curbs are so aggressive as well. I mean, they are quite aggressive in real life, but again, I think it's probably on the extreme side of the scale in terms of how aggressive they are. But anyway, I think there's one lap to go after this. We're currently on for a mid-34. If I remember correctly, our quali lap time that would have got pole if I didn't get done for track limits in real life was a mid-34. So yeah, as I said, we're in a race scenario here, by far away from the best conditions. It's pretty hot, and the pressures aren't right. It's a random setup. I did no practice, and we're already doing mid-34s. So you can already see the sim's going to be a lot quicker. And yeah, across the line it's a 134.5. So going into the final lap of the race, nothing else really happens, to be honest, but we'll take you through it anyway. and on the exit of turn 1 get a bit of oversteer, so the runoff is not that nice, but it's quite forgiving in terms of track limits. So I went wide quite a few times at various corners, like here as well, and the game didn't give us any warnings or any penalties, whereas in real life there was a sensor on the exit of both of those corners, and if you touch the sensor you got 3 strikes and then you get given a penalty. So you can see here on the entry to the hairpin we gained a lot of time and managed to get the car hooked up mid-corner, get it rotated and get on the power, and we gained 3/10 in that hairpin alone, so that's pretty good. I was pretty impressed by that. Going into this chicane we lose a bit of time on the exit because we get the rear moving about too much on that curb. So I think with Alton the thing is to kind of avoid the curbs. The rest of the lap I made a little mistake, no point showing that. Across the line we do finish P1 ahead of Dennis Lind, and that is the end of the race and the end of this video. So the content in this video, so the tracks, the cars, the British GT pack will be released today, so make sure you go and download it on Steam if you already have ACC. If you don't have ACC, I highly recommend you get it because in my opinion it is the most realistic simulator out there in terms of racing. And yeah, that is it really, so give the video a thumbs up, sub away if you really enjoyed it. But until the next video, I'll see you soon.